Hi, book club members. I'm Jen.
And I'm Carrie.
And this is Warhammer 40k Book Club, where we read from a crag. This is episode number 99, and our book is The Lion, Son of the Forest by Mike Brooks. It tells the triumphant return of the lion to the second millennium? We posted several questions on our website. I hate you, I didn't get a copy of the book. Was on 5 minutes early. Did not get a copy of the hardback or the limited edition. We posted several questions on our website, wh40kbookclub.com, and we encourage participation in our conversations via Twitter, YouTube, our site, or Encrypted Vox channel. Spoiler warning, if you haven't yet read this book, definitely check it out and then come back and listen to this episode, as we're going to be diving into tremendous detail about this from start to finish. With that, let's dive in. As always, Carrie, did you like the book?
I did, but not as much as you did.
I loved this book. I can already tell that this is going to be the forerunner for my book of the year. And this might be one of my top 10 favorites. I had the same reaction reading this book that I had to Apocalypse, where it just got its hooks into me and I loved everything that I was seeing and I was here for the ride. Even with the weird mirror wings. Actually, probably because of the weird mirror wings.
Mirror wings? Because I'm just not remembering it. This is why I don't read the books usually until about 2 days before the podcast, because I won't remember. I actually remember mirror wings.
Yeah, what's his face? Zarafax, when the mirror falls on him and then his wings spread out all Zinchi style and you can see the reflections of people in them who he's torturing currently. I was like, this is an aesthetic that I'm here for while not necessarily approving of it. See, if that makes sense.
That's why I don't remember it. You get to chaos stuff and I'm immediately just whatever. It's all the same.
Zinchi. What parts stood out to you?
There were a few things. I am so glad I had just finished reading Angels of Caliban and the Horus Heresy before I got to this, because there were so many callbacks and there was so much... It was really leaning on the development of the lion and the entire thing with the Fallen was in Angels of Caliban. What happened with Zaharia, what happened with Cypher, what was really going on. And honestly, I'm glad and I'm not. I'm glad because it lighted in anything. I'm not because I really wish Gav Thorpe wrote this book and not Mike Brooks. I kind of feel the same way about this as you felt about Gav Thorpe writing Space Wolves. I like the book. I don't like you writing this faction in particular. But that's...
Right.
That's just me. I mean, probably, there was a lot of things that I liked, but as for standing out, I'm looking at my notes and I didn't take a lot of notes. And I think it's because I was just kind of yeah, okay, it doesn't... All right, let's be honest. This book did not wow me as much as I was expecting. I think I put way too much into this. I was expecting because it was the lion and with the dark angels and the fallen, this was just going to bowl me over, and it didn't. And what's so funny to me is that so many comments I've seen from our YouTube channel and stuff is people were like, I hate the dark angels, but I love this book. And I find that funny. Just for this...
I have decided to go back to a comment you made. I've decided that maybe I don't hate the Dark Angels. I just hate Gav Thorpe. His writing style and his take on them. Maybe that's... And you know what? I could be wrong. Maybe it's... Because there were moments throughout this book where I was like, oh, for God's sake. Like Zabriel, for example, there's a part where he's thinking in the beginning and he's kind of ruminating and he's like, we were the first. We were the blueprint. We're the ones who do everything and blah, 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 blah. And he had a lot of those things that I was just like, oh, there's the Dark Angels I know.
Well, no, that's not fair. That's the Terran Dark Angels. The Terran, and that's one thing that was really highlighted a lot in Angels of Caliban, especially with the Terrans who that were banished, or they felt like they were banished to Caliban. Sorry guys, I'm sick. Jen's sick. We're fighting through this. My head's really, really foggy right now. I don't know if it's that I think what it is that you liked Phil Kelly's book about the Dark Angels, but you still didn't like the Dark Angels. And so honestly, but going back to like thinking about like the Space Wolves and stuff, I'm not a fan of the Space Wolves, but I enjoyed those books written by Gav Thorpe because that was my interpretation of the Space Wolves.
Because Gav Thorpe doesn't like the Space Wolves. So if you don't like them, right? Because we had that conversation in that book that he wrote.
Well, we're assuming that he doesn't because he's written, 2 of them now. But I mean,
given the books, you're right. That is completely my inference from them.
I don't think Mike Brooks gets the Dark Angels. It's the same way like you didn't think like Gav Thorpe gets the Space Wolves. And that was kind of my thing. I did not like his take on this. And maybe it's because I just felt like everything with the Fallen was a little too, I don't know. It all comes together too perfectly. Like I was looking for more of that Dark Angels secrecy. Oh, you're not going to believe what's been going on. And what I see happening instead is I see this as a lead to he's about to create a whole lot of more problems for his own faction because his own faction is going to be like, dude, like the prodigal son returns. You're letting these people back in when we've been like hunting them like our entire lives because they abandoned you when they attacked you first, which as Zabriel's like, holy crap, it was actually Luther and them. They did do this. Like we really messed up.
I loved the scene where Zabriel's explaining to Kai, he's like, oh yeah, look, basically the lion says that we attacked him first, and Kai immediately is like, I told you there was something wrong with Luther. Like, that guy got it immediately, right? And everyone else is like, shh, like, keep that on the down low. Like, we're not discussing yet with this person. We don't know this person from Adam. But I loved the idea that, and there is a little bit, I think that's actually the part that I love, is that of all the potential that I saw with the lion, but I think, him coming back, him bringing the Fallen back into the fold was not something I was expecting. And I think one of the things that I really like about it is that, and this goes back to Apocalypse, the whole concept of Saint Dreadnought was very interesting to me because the idea of a traitor being able to turn around and find that redemption, I really liked that in the 40K universe because we know that we've seen plenty of characters of this, like plenty of the traitor legions, either they just kind of got wrapped up in the fact that they were part of that legion and they're like, I'm not necessarily into the chaos thing, or they have regrets, deep regrets. And I like the idea that the lion is basically like, so long as you never trucked with chaos, I'll talk to you.
Yeah, and I understood that because that was actually something Astalon and Angels of Darkness actually brought up. Was not that he wasn't on that side, but when he was during his interrogation, he was actually talked about the battle, and he even said there was a group of Dark Angels that didn't agree with what happened and was fighting against them. So I'm imagining these guys were in that faction who were just like, no, we need to find out what's actually going on. And that I understood. I guess, I don't know. I think I had higher expectations of this book, and it just didn't meet what I was personally expecting. I didn't expect the Watchers in the Dark to take them on a goddamn fever dream. Be like, oh, you're going to go here because we're going to take you here and see how this. And now we're going to let you go here and we're going to warp you over here because this is what the Watchers do. There's something they actually talked about a lot in Angels of Caliban was how they warp people different places.
Yes. So let's dive into that because that was I got that was partially what's going on, but that wasn't my full interpretation of it. So let's talk about the forest, the Wounded King, the Watchers in the Dark. Like for me, right, I love the concept of Caliban breaks in a warp storm. I love the idea that essentially the lion was cast adrift. Right, that all of these guys were, all of the Fallen, because they talk about how they pop in and out of the warp like at random places, right? That the lion was essentially adrift at sea, and the Emperor is fishing for him because he's trying to get his sons back to him. I love this idea. And there's a scene later in the book when he goes back into the forest the second time before they come out on that the second planet whose name I cannot think of right now. It's not Cameron, it's the other one. But he talks about how he feels like there's a hook in his chest dragging him. I love the idea that the Emperor is like, okay, come on, now you got to come over here now. We've got other stuff I need you to do. And then he gets to that planet and they're like, randomly, we have this giant pistol, this giant gun that nobody can use, and it's even too big for a space marine on our planet. It's just been here for forever, by the way. Like, and also...
but that's my problem. It's too convenient, and I don't like things perfectly tied in a little bow. And
I actually like it, and I'll tell you why. Because what's one of the conversations you and I have a lot? Is this all in the Emperor's plan?
I mean, I guess. But
when I read that, I was like, you sly dog, you.
I think that's too simple of an explanation. That's just me. Mainly because you got the Watchers in the Dark involved. And the Watchers in the Dark have always been, we are basically the spirits of Caliban, in a way. That gets really discussed a little more heavily in Angels of Caliban. So, I could see the Watchers in the Dark going to the Emperor, in this weird fever dream, because this is what the Watchers do. They pretty much spoke to Zahariel the first time in a fever dream. I think they're just going to be little fever demons just going around, because that's usually when they talk to people, is when they're not sure what's going on, where they are, or what's happening. I mean, there's that one Watcher that came to visit the Lion. When he was going to leave Macragge at the end of Angels of Caliban, and was basically telling him, was like, you're not supposed to go home yet. And he was like, well, that's interesting coming from you. And that's when he puts together the puzzle about what Kurz was saying. It was just like, oh my God, my father's still alive. I need to get back to Macragge, like, immediately and stop the execution. Because this means our father's alive. Which I'm just kind of like, you don't need to stop the execution. I mean, yeah, your dad's still alive. You have to stop killing this guy. But, whatever. The book ends with, Kurz laughing like a madman. So why not? But the Watchers make things, to me, the Watchers make it too muddy. And that's just, maybe I really didn't like this book. I liked it, but I was disappointed at the same time, I guess.
I really liked the Watchers in the Dark. I liked the concept of the Emperor essentially trying to fish for the lion to get him back, right? But then also presented, and I understand that there is the literal, the Fisher King metaphor going on here, right? There's definitely an allegory. That was the word I was looking for, not a metaphor. This allegory of the Fisher King, which fits so delightfully. But it was also, I liked the idea, because there's I can't remember which book it is, or what Primarch book it is. It might have been the Alfarius book, but I wanted to think it was the lion who was ruminating on this. But the idea that the Emperor presented himself differently to each of his sons. So, like, when each of his sons looked upon him, they saw something that reflected in them.
That was from the Lion Primarch novel.
Okay. So when he talks about how, like, they each, and because the lion, of course, is like, I see the real version of him, but everybody sees him kind of how what they would respond to, right? And so I love the idea that he's in a forest, in a boat, fishing, because that is something that would ruminate with the lion. And I like the idea that maybe the Watchers in the Dark can step up as part of the lion to be like, okay, we can help you here. But now it asks this huge... Well, actually, first off, let's talk about... So he meets him twice. He meets him once in the river, where the Emperor is basically being circled by the chaos, the gods, like everything, right? Then he meets him in the castle. That scene... It also leads into our next question too, but that scene I really loved, because I like that the lion, being the lion, is like, all right, I can help you, dude. And I love when the Emperor looks at him and is kind of like, no, you need to not be here right now, or you need to figure out the right question to ask me. I don't have the strength to explain this stuff to you, right? But it's also very much the Emperor, like, I need you to figure this out for your own self. I'm not going to sit here and draw pictures for you.
Well, it kind of reminded me of when Reboot talked about his conversation, doing air quotes for podcast people, conversation he had with his father. He said his father lacked the subtlety he once did.
Yes. I loved that, but it begs the question. Right? Sorry, it does not beg the question, because that's the wrong use of that phrase, but it brings up the question, what is the right question? Is the question, how do I help you? Is the question, what do I need to do? I mean, obviously, who are you? It's not the right question, probably. But what question could he possibly be waiting for the lion to ask?
Oh, it's not, I kind of wondered this at first. I was like, you know what? I don't want to know. This
Is this the contents of Marcellus Wallace's briefcase?
Yes. I was
That's
going to
fair.
do a different reference, but that works as well. I mean, that actually works very fun. Like, I don't want to know. We don't need to know. I don't think it's important to know what the right question is. Because, again,
It's kind of fun to
also, this
plug
is the
something
Dark
in your
Angels.
brain.
I would like to have, this is like why we like them, because of the secrecy and mystery. It'd be nice that there's actually one mystery that the lion can't solve. Even though he thinks he knows everything.
Or like eventually he'll be able to solve it right down the road. Like he doesn't need to solve it right now. He's got enough on his plate
And
right now.
I don't think he ever needs to say what it is.
No.
It's kind of like, remember the movie City Slickers? When, I can't remember the guy's name. Anyway, he was telling Billy Crystal, the only thing that matters in life is that one thing. And he's like,
Jack Palance.
Yeah, Jack Palance, but he never tells him what that one thing is. And at the end, Billy Crystal, he was like, I remember and now know what that one thing is. And they're like, well, what is it? And he's like, I can't tell you because it's different for everybody. And that's kind of how I feel like this is. He knows what that question is, but he's not going to tell us. Or I'll be very disappointed.
Maybe.
Or I'll be very
Or he doesn't know it.
I mean, I'm not saying like right now, but like eventually, like he'll know, but he's not going to.
I agree.
Tell us. Like the same way, like I love the fact we don't know the conversation between Reboot and his father.
Yes, I was just about to say that. Like the fact, I don't ever want to have that spelled out. I don't ever want to have the exact dialogue that goes between them. We can infer so much of it, and I feel as though Guy Haley really gave us that. He gave us enough context clues that, again, we can kind of infer. And if we can't infer from that, we can certainly infer from Mortarian's reaction, right? Where Mortarian's like, oh, you did talk to Dad, didn't you? How did that go? Like, there's so much that we can kind of plug in there and make our own conversation. And we're probably all, and I say all, like anybody listening to this, we're probably all in the neighborhood of the same area, right? Like the particulars might change, but we're all kind of, and I feel like this question is probably the same thing too. We'll all come up with something that's probably in the same neighborhood of something, but I don't ever want it to be, and I also don't want it to be one of those like magical MacGuffins where all of a sudden, like 2 years from now, 30 books from now, the lion walks before the king and is like, question, and then the emperor is just like, hey, I'm good now. Like, nor do I want him, like, I would like it to be something that is implied. Like, maybe he does go and talk to the emperor, he asks the question, the emperor talks to him, but we as readers, we don't need to know. If it's like, I need you to quest to go and find a shard from an eagle. Okay, great. I don't need to know that. Like, there's actually kind of a great fun to that mystery.
Or maybe it's just going to be like, I need you and your brothers to get along and work together.
Speaking of that, so what do you think of this 40K version of the lion? How has he grown? How is he the same?
Well, one thing I wrote in my notes is that I really feel, especially if you look at, look just at looks alone. Like I take the Primarch novel, how he looks on the Primarch novel, and compare him to how he looks here. And all my Green Arrow jokes aside, I feel like this has become his transformation from Lancelot to King Arthur. Anyways, like I know it's a little heavy-handed because they are like, the Camelot Knights. Hi, Fisher King, Sir Gawain. I mean, it's pretty much ham-fisted in there. Medieval British lit.
Loved it.
I was mixed on it. You know what? I was fine with it until he put it in the afterword. I was like, I hate it when authors do that because I like the reader to make their own interpretations. Because if you don't get that interpretation and you totally interpret the Sir Gawain thing to be something totally different, awesome. I don't care what the author's intentions are. Anyway, that's my own personal literature rants there. But I felt like this was his, like, because he was always, that knight Lancelot who was always, running forward, not really thinking about others. And now I see more of a king. He's Arthur now. He realizes he's got a really heavy burden. He messed up, not Mordred proportions, but he messed up. And he's trying to seek redemption in his own way with his subjects or his sons and try to right any wrongs that he had. And honestly, just for him to say that he failed his brothers was huge for him, especially after coming off of Angels in Caliban, when he was convinced that Sanguinius and Reboot failed him, even though he was the one who really, really messed up how he handled Kurz and everything. But
Well, and I think that's actually one of my favorite scenes in the book. It's very early on, but it's Mike Brooks did a thing, and it's a very difficult thing to do, where he has shown a character, as you said, who's progressed from like Lancelot to Arthur. He has shown a character who has grown and changed a little, but is still the same character. And there's a scene early on when he's talking with Zabriel and he's thinking about the Imperium Secundus. And he's like, oh man, like I should have worked more with Reboot. Like I understand what Reboot was trying to do, and I understand what he wasn't trying to do, and I just should have been like he's a good guy, and I should have been more cooperative. I should have been more supportive. And then Zabriel's like, oh yeah, Guilliman broke apart the legions, and the lion immediately is like, that son of a bitch.
yeah.
Like then he immediately still goes back to the old lion that we know. But
that did make me laugh because I will say for Mike Brooks, like, yes, that is exactly how the lion would react.
Well, exactly, because again, and he goes just like between this deep contemplative version of him where he's actually thinking more. And two phrases or like variations of these phrases that popped out a lot in this book is when they would say like, he is unaccustomed being questioned. He is unaccustomed to being doubted. But like, and then he would talk about how he swallowed, he repressed his irritation, he repressed his anger because he knows that he's a stranger in a strange land and he needs all the help he can get. And beggars can't be choosers right now. I loved that. I also love at the end of the book when Dante shows up. Like he's kind of like, okay, I'm a little trepidatious here. Like I'm going to meet some blood angels.
Man. When he sees
Dante walks down and he
face,
immediately is like, who are you? Like we see the old lion of how dare you, sir. And then, oh, okay. And then you see that new like contemplative version of him of like, okay.
Which honestly, in the lion's defense, I would get that. You see the face of your dead brother walking up to you, is like, that's not cool, dude. Like, not cool. You shouldn't be doing that.
Well, and God, can you imagine trying to explain that to like having to explain that to a Primarch of like, oh yes, your dead brother. Yes, I wear his visage to honor him forever.
And to hide the fact that I'm like 1,500 years old, but
what? Well, I liked when he said, he's like, oh, I've served the Imperium for like 1,000 years, and the lion's like, come again? I also liked that he did a lot of stuff where he ruminated on other Primarchs. And this is always one of my favorite things is when the Primarchs ruminate and think about like the other Primarchs, right? And like when he talked about, when he was thinking about Russ, right? And he's like, oh man, I almost missed that big dumb savage bastard. And then, but he also talks about like when he was comparing like Russ to Angron, and he's like, yes, Russ appeared the savage, but it was a savage with control and restraint. And
yeah, I did.
He also had
when he talked about, he's like, people thought he was just an idiot, and because Reboot said the same thing before, which I kind of like that yes, they present this way, but the brothers know. Like, no, he's actually very, very smart. He plays a role to get a rise.
Yes, and to like, yeah, exactly. And there was a scene that I really liked with him too, when it's when that first space combat, and Darrigan is just like kind of shocked because he's like, how did you know that the traitors would fire on themselves? And the lion's like, oh, you never met Angron, did you?
Yeah.
Like, and I love that Zabriel's like, oh snap, but then remembers he's like, oh wait, you don't even know who Angron is.
Yeah, like he's all
so the insult just.
He was waiting for them to be like, genuflecting and throwing
like,
holy water.
No.
Yeah.
Exactly. Crossing themselves. Exactly that. It's that kind of stuff but again, I liked how much, and I liked in the very beginning when he's kind of thinking and he's trying to piece together stuff. And again, when he's thinking about Reboot and he's thinking about Imperium Secundus, and he says, he's like, Father, why did you make us so incomplete? Because he recognizes his own failings, right? But he recognizes his brother's failings too. And actually, again, to use D&D terms, this is why you don't spec into one tree.
Well, I really liked when, of course, I liked his reflection on Reboot, especially with the way that things ended in Angels of Caliban with Reboot, like casting him out and like, you are no brother of mine, which that was Reboot being angry. And it does take a lot for him to be angry, but when you're like willing to sacrifice like his people so that you can get your monster trophy, he gets a little angry.
Understandably,
especially
right?
when you already promised you wouldn't do these things and then you did it. Now, was it kind of weak that it was Kurz who told on him? Yes, but that, of course, is what Kurz is going to do.
Of course.
No, but when he was talking about, how Reboot, how he's such a brilliant statesman and tactician. He said, because he's able to focus on a million things at once. He said, but he was never a good arm-to-arm combatant. He said, because I think he can't focus on just one thing. He's too busy analyzing everything. I'm like, that's probably very true. That's one reason why you saw him, not that he couldn't kick ass. And you read the Primarch novel of his, when my favorite scene is when he's chasing down the orcs. I mean, this big old blue thing running after you has got to be a little crazy. He's so fast. He's able to catch up with these orcs. And it's just like picking them off one by one, just throwing them off. It's a great scene. Mm-hmm. But when that wonderful scene also when he confronts Angron. And Angron easily bests him, sending Reboot crawling away. He was like, yes, that's the second brother now. I've gotten to crawl away from me. It's like, there's something to that because he's not able to see. It's a really interesting explanation for why he's so good at chess, but isn't good at boxing. I guess it's probably a better way to explain all that. Whereas the lion, because problem with the lion, and he even says that, is that he gets hyper-focused. And that's another thing that he had. One thing I loved in Angels of Caliban was that he was always talking about how he did get hyper focused, and he's like, "Yes, I might have done this, but I had this in mind." And they totally like Luther. He knew I sent him off there because I'm not a good ruler. Like he needs to be doing that. He's much better at that than me. That's why I sent him. And I was like, and in my notes I was writing, "But did you tell him that? He thinks he's being punished. They all think that they're being punished."
Which they delved into a lot in this book, right? Yeah. Especially with Zabriel, with him like really reflecting
Zabriel
on
confronting him. He was like, "This is what happened." He was like, "That's not what I meant. Didn't you guys get the memo? Like, the one you never sent when we're just supposed to."
Yeah, right, exactly. Didn't you just read my mind? Well, and it's funny, and this goes back to that phrase of him like asking the Emperor, like, "Why did you make us so incomplete?" I feel as though the lion in particular is guilty of, well, I have looked at this situation, I have analyzed it thoroughly, so everybody else has analyzed it as well. Like, I respect Luther so much. I have done the math here, and I have mathed out that I'm better for this, and Luther's actually a better people person, so clearly Luther has also done this math and has come to the same conclusion.
Luther raised me.
I feel like the lion is the definition of assumption is the mother of all F-ups. Because... Yeah. He tends to, and he says it in that, I actually had to pull up because I had highlighted that passage as well, when he says that he is aware it has made him cold and detached to others at times, but that too is an extraneous detail. Because he talks about how he just focuses on the bigger picture and just leaves all the extraneous details to his subordinates. And the fact that, there was a misunderstanding. People found him to be very cold. People found him to be very detached. Details.
Right. Like minor details. Like you guys will figure it out.
Well, and like I think sometimes that it is that kind of hunter-gatherer mentality there, right? One of the things I talk about a lot, the difference between like girls and boys hockey, is that girls hockey is a very social game, whereas boys, it's a very like, don't make no mistake, these girls are out to win, and they will. The checks that we have seen in the spring high school league, I'm like, damn girl. But like boys, if the boys aren't getting to get along in the locker room, they don't care. They're all still in it just to win, right? The girls, that's a big portion of it, right? It's that hunter-gatherer like mentality of like, these little details matter. Like the fact that she's not talking to me right now matters to me. I feel as though Reboot had a good handle on that. He had a handle that, look, if people think that you're being cold, if people think that we're not working together, that's a major... Like, you need to explain to people. You need to really... And I liked the idea. My favorite quote was where the lion has sometimes wondered if that was because Reboot was never able to properly give his attention to anything.
Like,
And we always see
any
Reboot.
any one thing.
Because he's so spread out. And we see that there's that great scene in Dark Imperium where he has like 20 data slates in front of him and a bunch of books, and he's giving them all equal attention, and he's carrying on a conversation with the dude over here. It's like, holy cow, he is, I think, and this goes back to that whole, did the Emperor plan all of this? Reboot is definitely the statesman and the leader and the king figure. Whereas the Lion is that laser focus. We need to focus in on one thing and go kill something. And I liked.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I really liked, again, going back to that growth thing.
Mm-hmm.
I like that he still is a hyper-focused man who still does. But I like that he at least has that reflection now to be like, maybe people did think I was cold and detached. But you know what? Still, he's not a fundamentally changed. He's not like, I'm just going to be nicer to everybody and I'm going to do this. And actually, gosh darn it.
I would actually be very disappointed if he
Yes,
did.
and I thought that was good, because what's one of my biggest complaints about the Horus Heresy? The primarchs vary so wildly depending on who's writing them and what their interpretation of that primarch is, whether they like them, whether they like a weird personality quirk about them, right? Like, that's one of my big problems, is that you can have these characters that go between these two extremes. I thought this was a great continuation of Lion. Yes, he's reacting to being, 10,000 years into the future and not knowing what the hell's going on. And yet, he's still the Lion. I also do like when he's like, why am I so slow? This actually kind of crushed me in the beginning when he's like, what enchantment is this?
And they're like, dude, you're just old.
You got old. And I do like that that's Zabriel, that's what he leads with. He's like, because they're like, well, is he changed? And old. Because we didn't know, and it's kind of fun too, because we don't actually know what would happen to a Primarch after 10,000 years. Like, do they age like the guy from the Green Mile?
Yeah, but it kind of begs the question, like, what's really going on? Because, like, Reboot hasn't really aged because he's been in stasis.
He was in a stasis field, though, right?
But we were under the impression that he was also, like, with the Watchers of the Dark, in a stasis. Now, is that an imperfect stasis? Was he never in stasis? Did the Watchers just kind of have him in one of their fever dream little capsules and just decided, you know what? And the Emperor was like, now. And they're like, yes, sir. And just released him into the forest. I mean, why not at this point? Because there was this one short story in the Horus Heresy where the Watchers, where Loken, yes, it was Loken and Yaktan Kurz go to Caliban to see what's going on, and they get immediately captured, and we don't know who frees them, but I think it's Cypher. And the Watchers release them as like, you need to go back to the Emperor and tell them what's going on. So then with this compact, it's like, okay, so the Emperor and the Watchers, like, they have something.
There's simpatico.
There's something. But what I was going to say earlier is like probably one of my favorite lines out of Angels of Caliban was when Reboot is like, he's pretty much pouting as he's trying to figure out what he's supposed to be doing in this triumvirate. And his, mother figure, Uten's is like, basically something vexes thee. And he was like, I don't know what to do with all this. Like, what was my point here? And so she just said, she's like, Reboot, Sanguinius is ruling, but someone needs to run the Imperium, and that's you. And he goes, and then she gets up and walks away. He goes, well, what am I supposed to do about the Lion? And she says, who says you have to do anything? And walks away. I was like, that's such brilliant advice. Like, basically, let the Lion be the Lion. And you be you, and Sanguinius be Sanguinius. Stop trying to, like, rule over everything. And so with that, like, with the Lion, if only the Lion could have heard that advice as well. Like, stop trying to change everything. Just let them be them and work
Let
together.
Reboot.
Yes, let Sanguinius, let you do you. But please don't like bomb his people unnecessarily. And then when he confronts you about it, you're like, yeah, well, these people killed your dad. Like dude, that wasn't cool.
Well, and like
King Conor, but with all that, with the Lion now, we still, yes, he is still like that. So so we know how it ends. We know he's going to find a way to get to Reboot. At least now that Dante's been here, Dante's going to be like, here's another voicemail to Robbie Bobby. Dude, you are not going to believe what I found on this side of the rift.
Well, and I love his reaction that it's not even like reboot. It's just I'm not alone.
Right.
Like, and I actually go into something that you said. I wonder if this new brave new world that they're in, where the Imperium is beset upon all sides by pick a thing, right, that's going wrong, including the Imperium itself. The Emperor is out of commission. Is this going to be the time when the brothers, as they more of them come back to life, back to the reality, like as they come back, are they going to be forced? Like in this situation, is Bob going to be like, look, go do your thing. Just go do your thing. I'll do my thing. And likewise, the Lion will have to say, okay, you do your thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go out and do my thing. Like, I think there's a lot of symbolism there that Reboot has the Emperor's sword, but the Lion has the Emperor's shield. One of them is meant to be more of a figurehead of like, I am charging forward and taking control of this situation, and the Lion is there to defend. Now it does make me wonder, like, as more Primarchs come back, like, what other knickknacks of the Emperor are they going to get? Like, I think it's great that the Lion has his shield. It's aesthetically, it's definitely a win. But like, somebody else is going to come back and they're going to get his boots. You're going to run out of regalia here, guys.
Well, obviously, Rogel Dorn's going to get the gauntlets.
Obviously.
I mean, I don't know what else he would get.
Missing hands. So,
but with
let's talk about
gauntlets, he has a new hand.
Exactly.
And
he has shiny new golden hands.
New fist, you might say.
You might say. And they would be very imperial.
Yes. Nice gold. Go nice with his hair. You know, with Dorn already gone white at the time, how much older could the guy look? I'm curious.
Right? So let's talk a little bit about Zabriel and Baylor's journeys. Because I thought they were a really neat mirror to one another.
Oh, yeah.
And how they could have very easily swapped roles, right? Like, you get the impression, especially with Baylor, like, so one of the things that I found that was very interesting about Zabriel is, ironically, what kept him on the straight and narrow was he didn't have anyone else with him. He was lonely, and he was constantly, like, he met up with other people and was like, I don't like anything that you're about. And then he would move on. Mm-hmm. Well, as Baylor had Serafax, and he had that connection and that brotherhood. And, okay, look, whatever you say, buddy. Oh, we have to truck with these literal demons. We have to truck with these Cornites.
Well, because
okay.
The crazy thing is that he actually believed Serafax's, basically, I think Mike Brooks listens to this podcast because he might have heard, my, Boardwalk guy from Dogma theory about how the Emperor is just waiting for someone to pull the plug on life support so he can come on out.
Oh, we're going to talk a lot about that here in a bit.
So he liked, so I'm going to say that he listens to this podcast. And, so he really believed that that's what Serafax was going to do, which I'm kind of laughing because I believe it was not St. Catherine. That Inquisitor is the same thing that they said they were going to do. The George Mann wrote it.
Sabatine.
Sabatine, is that her name?
No, wait, sorry, that's the Inquisitor.
Yeah.
She's the one hunting the Dark Angels.
Sabathiel.
Sabathiel,
yeah.
Sorry, yes.
Where she woke up and they had that same thing, where they had the Custodes, because they're like, well, yes, this is what we're going to use to help, like, revive the Emperor. It's like, why do you guys believe this?
Well, and then remember, like, we've come across this before. I can't remember. It was in one of those John French Inquisitor novels. The guys who were like, we just need to unplug the throne.
Again,
like, this has been
to us. All of them.
But I thought that Zabriel and Baylor, it was interesting to watch, and it kind of killed me to watch Baylor just being ripped apart inside. And I like when the Slaneshi guy is just like, oh, were you that scared about hearing Daddy's name? And he's like, screw you. Like, this is random as hell for this backwater planet to be singing the praises of my dad, who never went there. Like, and they talked about, I'm trying to think of what book that was in. It was one of the Chris Rates Space Wolf books. It was in one of those books where they were talking about how, like, look, if you're in the trenches with an Imperial Guardsman, like, ask them about the Primarchs. Everyone knows about Sanguinius, right? And he's like, the really pious ones might know a few others. They know Russ, though. But it kind of made you think, like, does everybody know the Lion? Does everybody have, like, speaking as an ex-Catholic, I can only name, like, probably 4 or 5 saints, right? Like, there's so many saints. I don't know, at this point in this world, are the Primarchs kind of like are they more like the apostles, or are they more like the saints? I don't know.
I would say the apostles, actually.
Probably. But I'm willing to bet that if you were to just grab someone off the street and be like, name all of the apostles, you're probably going to get Peter, John,
maybe Thomas.
Echo.
Maybe Thomas, because of doubting Thomas.
Maybe. Like, I mean, I feel as though, I mean, and really, if you started to name them, if you started to go through the apostles, people would be like, are you just naming the top boys' names?
Or they just go like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. No,
Matthew. But... Yeah, exactly. Like, it's those type of things where it's like, oh, because they have a book in the Bible, right? No. Like, I don't know. Is that part of that? I liked that he was immediately like, oh man. And I thought that his ending was very fitting. I liked that he saves the Lion, but the Lion's like, buddy, thank you, but I can't trust you. And Baylor's like, yeah, I know. Like, there was no, like, big, no, please, I've changed, or nor was there some big dramatic, you said you'd forgive us, look who you really are. No, he was just like, you're right. You can't really. And even Zabriel's like, you can't. You just can't. I also, I liked Zabriel's journey as well. I liked the whole idea that the Fallen have, like, a secret language that they use to talk to each other.
Actually reminded me of, because... you probably heard this too as a kid about that hobos used to mark stuff. So that's what kind of made me think of.
Or, like, again, I always go back into D&D. There's the Thieves' Cant, which that's what that is, right? The hobo marks is based off, the Thieves' Cant is based off of that. I liked the idea that as he's going through, he's like, okay, there's the 3 broken. So, okay, I know who these people are. And then all of a sudden he's like, But I really liked that, again, we've talked about this before, we see all these people who just want that sense of brotherhood and that sense of belonging. It is so hard-coded into them. I thought he handled those 2 journeys and the 2 sides of how you could very easily go over to the chaos side. Very easily. Mm-hmm. Or you can stay the straight and narrow. But you get the impression that Zabriel's had a much harder life than Baylor has.
Right.
And all it took was mirror wings for Baylor to be like, ooh, I don't think so.
Wait, you said we were going to bring the Emperor back.
Let's talk about that. Let's jump ahead one question, then we'll come back to the other one and talk about, was Seraphax a good antagonist for the Lion in this book? And what do you think of his plan?
Well, I mean, yeah, he has a plan. As good as any other chaos plan. The reason why I thought he was a good antagonist for the Lion was because he was so the Lion could see how far some of his sons have, fallen. How far they have fallen. So we can totally understand what he's working with here. That they're not all the Fallen are going to be like Zabriel. They're not all going to be like Seraphax. Some are going to be like, the guy who won the Hermit. I can't remember his name. I think I wrote my notes, called him the Hermit. Some are gonna be like him.
Some are gonna be like Boars, who are in an interesting gray area. Not chaos, but definitely tyrannical. Tyrannical, that happened. Piratical. He's also a piranha.
Because there's also the whole question that we know Astalon and Luther are still out there. Mm-hmm. Especially Luther, since Azrael doesn't know how to close the door behind him.
He had some things on his mind at the time.
Yeah, he still could close the door behind him. It's just, oh crap. Luther got out. Don't know where he was going to go on the rocks.
The Watchers.
Which, and I actually could have written like a whole dissertation after all the Horus Heresy books I've read about the Dark Angels, about whose side are the Watchers really on? Just like, I can't tell whose side Cypher was on. And I don't mean the current Cypher. Or maybe I do. I don't know. because the whole thing is weird with how that went in the end with the Cypher and Zahariel. Who knows? And that is kind of the fun of it also with Dark Area. He's like, whose side are they on? It's kind of funny, how, Zabriel's even telling Lion, by the way, like, your guys, like they're still loyal, but they kind of like suddenly stop doing things when they get a sense that we're out here. And Lion's like, well, that's kind of a problem.
Well, and I also like that he was basically like, yeah, that's a future me problem.
Right.
Like, I gotta get off this planet. I gotta figure out what's going on. I gotta figure out who, what, when, where, why, how.
I need to get to Terra. And now it's like, well, now I need to find Reboot. And honestly, what I loved about because I was really interested how that was going to have, because there was a huge parallel going on with the Unremembered Empire. When Reboot is on McCrag and saying, I just need one of my Loyalist brothers to come here and help me with this. Just one. Any of them. And then it's Lion.
And Lion pops up and he's like,
why? Why this guy of all people? Like, why him? And
I need one. Any other one than him.
Right? Anybody else will do. But when he's thinking, because I rewrote down the page where he's actually thinking, he's like, I just want to know if any of my brothers are around. Like, I just want one of them. Anybody. I was like, oh, be careful what you wish for, dude. And then he hears it's Reboot. I was totally expecting him to have the same reaction that Reboot did and be like, why this guy?
Right.
But then he did. But like, okay.
I am not alone.
But I think that's a mark of growth.
Very much so. Very much so. And I think he just, like, again, of all your brothers, at least that's one that you have a history with, right? Like, I always think about when Mortarion, I think it's in the second Dark Imperium book, when he's thinking about Reboot and he's like, I didn't even really not like this guy. I didn't really have any opinions about him at all.
Yeah, like
he was just kind of milquetoast.
He was like, he's not the one that I liked the most or the one I liked the least. He's the one I know the least about. I think he even called him the boring one. Which is kind of funny.
Which I like, but at least like for Reboot, it's like, or with the Lion, it's like, oh, at least I know the guy. And it was kind of interesting. So I really liked the test that he was given, which I totally forgot to talk about in the beginning. I liked the test he was given when the warp stuff is taking on the persona of his brothers and basically
that was
saying...
probably one of my favorite parts.
I loved it because it's basically them saying the thoughts that are going through his head. Like his deep, dark thoughts. And Reboot is probably the gentlest of them in that. Where he's just like... You ruin everything. Like, it's the other brothers who really needle him, right?
What got me was Ferris.
That one. The fact that Ferris spoke to him at all made me sad as well, because I'm like, oh man.
And of all things he said, where's your vengeance? It's like, oh man, just cut that to the quick, dude. I know you've been dead the longest, but way harsh, Ty. You didn't need to go that far.
Well, and I love Lorgar's thing too. Like, oh, now you accept this worship as a god.
Oh yeah.
Because like we've already seen Reboot have to struggle with this. It's going to be interesting to watch the Lion have to struggle with it as well, right? To be like, oh my god, like not even a thing. And I also like because I had to go back to that page when Ferris Manus is like, where is your vengeance? I like that Corax. Where is your guile? And then, of course, who hits him the hardest and the most? Conrad. It is Conrad Kurz who's there the longest. Because everybody else kind of takes a hit and disappears, right? But no.
Well, Lehman Russ is there also.
For quite a bit at the beginning. Yeah. But he disappears.
It's the two brothers, I think, that he related to the most. Or the two that he, I guess, kind of had this interesting relationship is probably the better way to put it, because he kind of had a hunter and prey thing with Conrad, and with Lehman Russ, I think it was just a one-upmanship.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I liked I like you could tell you could tell Kurz got under his skin from the Unremembered Empire, from Angels of Caliban. He has such a history with this man. And I had to go to the page when he says that when Kurz is just talking about he's like entire worlds shat themselves when they heard that I was coming.
Right.
And then he talks about he's like, yeah, but then you would burn planets to ash just cuz. And I like when he said, why is it, brother, that you are a hero and I am a villain simply because I left some wretches alive to talk about me? It's like, again, you can see that these are like the darkest thoughts. And that was why I love this scene is one, they were all kind of within the guise of their characters, but you could tell that this is the lion at his most introspective. Like these are every intrusive thought that goes into his head from the darkness.
Yeah, actually, when I got to this line with Kurz, I was like, oh, Jen's in her happy place. When he says, at least I knew which of my legion deserved to die. They all did, the lion growls. Kurz smiles, and I knew that.
Oh my God. I loved that. I absolutely loved that whole scene was amazing, but that was like you had Seraphax and you had this like the end. Once he beat Seraphax, I was like kind of looking at the ebook. I was like, oh, there's still a lot of pages. How do you top Seraphax? Aha! That's how you top Seraphax. Basically, the lion fighting himself. It reminded me a little bit of the mirror concept from the Neverending Story.
Yeah.
Like just fighting everything that you've been thinking, right? And it also reminded me a little bit of Saint Celestine.
I was also
when she has to go through all those demons.
That's a good one too. But I was actually thinking of Empire Strikes Back when Luke goes to the cave.
Very much that, right? Chops off Vader's head, and it's his head inside. Like there's so much going on in that scene. You're absolutely right. That's exactly. It reminded me of that. It reminded me of Celestine constantly being challenged by the demons. Like this was like the one final test of you've got to get out of your head. You have to shake off all of these all this negativity that you have, every doubt, everything that you're sitting there going, oh man, we don't have time for this right now. You need to take up my shield, and you need to go out there and be the lion. And he passed. He passed the test. All right. So let's talk about, because these last two things kind of pull into one another. What percentage, if you had to guess, of the fallen have potential to be risen?
If anything, from what I remember of Angels' Darkness, I would say of the fallen, maybe a third.
That's a lot of guys.
Definitely
That's
not
a
half,
whole lot of guys.
but
No.
But a third for sure.
No, I don't think it's half. I think you're right. I think it's less than a half. Maybe a third. I could get on board with that. Because you have to think, and this has always been one of those things that I know Angels of Darkness really touched on, and then we haven't in the modern 40K universe, we haven't really seen it, really. The concept of the fallen who were like, look, I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was a grunt. I wasn't one of Luther's best friends. I didn't know what was going on.
The lion, like Zabriel even talked about, the lion came through and just killed a whole bunch of recruits. He didn't even know who they were. They didn't know who he was. And like, I could see those guys being like, screw you, dude. I didn't even know who you were. And you came in and started killing us. We're like, what the hell's going on?
And I did like when he's like, you're not even loyal to the Emperor. And the lion's like, excuse you. But that was always his take. Is like, you turned traitor. You came back and you killed all of us. And we hadn't done anything. So just it's a huge misunderstanding. Which is funny to me because I think I've said this, that like one of the tropes that I hate in movies and in books that sends me through the goddamn roof is misunderstandings and challenges or fights or arguments that could have been prevented with 1 5-minute conversation. I really hate that. It's like this whole situation could have been avoided if someone would have been like, oh, hey, did you know this? And the other person goes, no, I did not know that.
This is what killed Jen's enjoyment of the Order 1886.
Yes.
It wasn't the looking at things. It was the not talking to one another for 2 minutes.
again, I especially hate it when it's a conversation that a basic human being would have.
Mhm.
Right? Like, there is no way that as human beings you would not just like have this conversation. Like, I point to rom-coms. Rom-coms are probably the worst offenders of this. Like, he sees his cousin and he hugs her and he kisses her and she see like on the cheek, but she, the love interest, sees it and is like, oh, he's cheating, and he's like, oh, I don't have to explain myself to you. Like a normal human being would be like, what was that? That's my cousin. Oh, misunderstand it, avoid it. Okay, cool. Or,
But the movie
the
has
evil
to
villain.
happen.
Exactly, because the movie needs to happen.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Grr, hate that. Which is what makes this particularly funny because, yeah, I feel like, and I did like that Zabriel had the conversation. They didn't sit there and just fight. Zabriel's like, you are a traitor. The lion's like, what are you talking about? No, you're the traitor. And they immediately suss it out. And then, when Zabriel goes to see the other fallen, first words out of his mouth, yeah, apparently there's like a huge misunderstanding here. And I liked that they're like something varying degrees of, are you sure? And yeah, I never liked Luther. Told you there was something wrong with Luther. Like, I liked this idea that everybody was having the conversations they were supposed to have.
The crazy
Like
thing is
10,000
that,
years.
if you look at, from reading Angels of Caliban and looking at Angels of Darkness, Luther wasn't even having those conversations with Astalan. Astalan was doing his own thing, 100% his own thing. And in fact, like the whole, debacle that kind of started the revolt against the Lion's troops I don't think it really would have happened if Astalan hadn't been like, you know what? That is my ship. And I am taking it back. Because Luther was like, what are you doing? I am taking back what's right. I didn't tell you to do this. And then suddenly a fight breaks out. And Luther's like, what are we doing? We're supposed to be together. And
right.
And then Astalan's like, whatever. We're doing it this way. So it's almost like we don't know who, what, it's doing what. Because even in Astalan's interrogation, he doesn't tell like the full truth there either, or even like what half of what he remembers, and the whole time he feels put upon.
Mm-hmm.
From his very first short story that was actually not written by Gav Thorpe, and then Gav Thorpe just took that and went with it. So it's really interesting. You have that perspective. Then you have Luther, who's just like, I'm being punished and I don't even know why. He's not even talking to me. I didn't even do anything. I'm now angry. Cypher's making his own little plans. Everybody else is upset because they'll be left behind. And then this asshole just kind of comes in and is like, I need 30,000 people. But what about our plan? Oh, who cares? I need them right now. Like, why can't we just talk about this? Nope. Guns out. We all fight. So yes, it was a misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm. But, I mean, it took 10,000 years, but much like the Titanic, better late than never. Ghostbusters 2's references for the win.
That's actually probably my favorite line from that movie.
It's really, like, arguably the best line, and yeah, from that whole movie, other than nice, Lewis, very nice, brief, but pointless. those two lines. But yes, I mean, better late than never that they are having these conversations. It took 10,000 years, but, I love the idea that there are guys out there who are like, yes, thank God, we've been rescued by we've been rescued by the lion. The lion is back. Let's do over, essentially, right?
It's just to me, it's going to make this all much more interesting when the lion finally does not only reconcile with Reboot, but with Azrael, with everybody.
So let's talk about that, shall we?
Because, Marnius Calgar hasn't had the best time since Reboot's come back.
But Reboot, I was thinking about this the other day. Follow me down this weird thought experiment I was having. Reboot comes back and is disappointed in his son's performance, right? Like, the 500 worlds aren't in our control anymore. Like, you allowed this to happen. You allowed this to happen. Like, fully knowing he's more like a disapproving father, right? The lion is essentially going to go back to the rock and be like, so, your entire identity needs to change now. Yes, I understand that we have it. Anyways, we'll get to that in a second. But like, he's essentially going to go in and be like, everything you're doing, I want you to change. Just stop it. Is it better to have dad come back and play the discerning dad if I'm not sure I like what you've done here? Or is it better to have the dad be like, everything that's about it's like the line from How to Train Your Dragon. We need to fix
this. You
this.
just pointed to all of me.
All of me. Yeah. Like, you're going to go back to Azrael and basically not just tell him that he, like, I don't even know if he covers the I disapprove of how you've been behaving, because it's very dark angel-y. And the lion kind of even seems to accept that when Zabriel's like, yeah, they'll drop literally everything for the Imperium because they think they've heard about one fallen angel, and the lion's like, okay.
I mean,
takes it surprisingly in stride.
I mean, to quote the Hulk, the big monster.
Yes. Exactly.
That's
exactly. And it's very dark angel-y.
It's very lion. Big monster.
Very lion. Well, it's not just that, it's the lion. Extraneous details. Focus in on that problem. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there an angel? Yeah, but like there's like an orc invasion on the next planet over. Angel wearing black. Extraneous details. So it's like, I think it's...
Uh-oh. Your mic sorry, your mic's gone. Wow, technical difficulties here, people. No idea what happened, but Jen's mic has suddenly just disappeared. There it is, kind of. Nope, it's gone again.
All right, let's try that, shall we?
It's there. Yay, she's back. I don't even know. This is funny. She's not amused, though. Nope, can't hear you. No, now I can.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, every now and then Discord is just like, no, with my mic for some or whatever reason. Anyways, the thing I was saying is that I think what's going to be interesting is how well they adhere to the new rules, right? Of like, okay, look, because his rules are essentially going to be somewhat vague or somewhat prone to bending. We will accept a fallen if they haven't trucked with chaos, right? So it makes you wonder how many of these Interrogator Knight chaplains are going to go out and be like, oh yeah, that guy was just full of chaos. Are you sure? Oh yeah. No. We took the tools to him. He was chaos. Are you sure though? Like literally every fallen you come across is with chaos? Oh yeah, definitely.
He looks at all the interrogator chaplains with their rosary beads.
Exactly. He's going to be like, were all of them chaos? Like, it doesn't matter. We're going forward. All of them have to be with chaos for us to kill them. And oh yeah, no, every single one of them still. It's chaos left and right. It's crazy. Like, I could absolutely see a world in which this becomes, because like right now, Reboot has the problem of the Primaris, and I can't wait to see what Lion's reaction to the Primaris is going to be, right? Like, ooh, that's going to be a fun one. Reboot has his own problems, right, within his Legion. A lot of it just boils down to the Primaris versus the OG and the fact that they are spread very thin right now. I think that's going to be the big thing for the Dark Angels going forward, is this idea of like some people are just not going to accept the Risen. They're not going to accept this concept. Like my whole identity has been built around the fact that I hunt these guys. And now you're telling me that some of them are okay? I'm afraid that's exactly what I'm telling you.
10,000 years is a long time.
Right. And it's going to be interesting because we've always talked about this, and I can't wait to see it. And like, I can't wait to see it play out. One of the things we've talked about is that the Dark Angels are very secretive by nature. They're very compartmentalized. They're very, we do our own thing, and we don't really have to explain it to anybody, because that's kind of how they've always been, even before the heresy, right? They had these orders and these groups and sects, and it's going to be very interesting to see when the Lion comes back if how many of the sects fall in line under him, and if whether or not he's able to be like, look, not only am I your dad, I was at Caliban, so I get to determine who is and isn't evil, right? Like, it's going to be interesting if they're like, oh yeah, sure.
I mean, there was always a Death Wing. There was always an Inner Circle, always like the Raven Wing and stuff like that. It's just going to be interesting how he's like, okay, like no more secrets with this. We're going to work on this together. Especially now that, tell Reboot, this is what happened. Let me go do this. And Reboot most likely would be like, yeah, that's fine.
Right. Or maybe he delegates.
Right. Like, I got other problems. You need to go, like, hunt down Wayward Brothers. Okay, fine. Like, that's fine. Because
Can you delegate and go deal with some of the Tyranids, though? Because that'd be great. And you could absolutely see the Lion being like, yeah, that's fine. I trust these guys. They'll go I'll delegate to them. Because he even talks about how he is a fan of delegation because for those extraneous details, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do the Fallen become that? Does he have?
I could see, or does it? That's going to be Zabriel's job. Is that
I was just about to say
ambassador,
ambassador for the Dark Angels, the Dark Ambassador. That would be an interesting concept for him too. Like, go find them, the ones who aren't with Chaos. We don't want those guys. That could be very interesting, but it does mean like, what do some of these people do? Like, this has been 10,000 years of their life. It's going to be an adjustment period, I feel like. And I know that like with the like some people are grumpy with Reboot being back even, right? Like even some of the Ultramarines are like,
I can't wait for the High Lords of Terra to freak out. There's now 2 of them.
There's another one? No, there's 2 of them. This is getting out of hand. Exactly. It's going to be that reaction of like, oh, great. And I can't wait for the custodians to be like, they're going to have to assign a babysitter to the Lion too.
As this guy who didn't even show up at the end.
Right, exactly.
Well,
we're going to trust this guy?
I was out destroying like their home worlds, but you weren't here. But I was out doing this. Don't you get it? I was doing important work.
I decided it was important. Don't ask. Additionally, it'll be interesting to see how the Inquisition reacts to yet another Primarch coming back, and one who is much better at being secretive than they are.
Oh, man. I did write down
Especially looking at you, Sabathiel.
A quote I wrote down. The echoes of Malgador reaching down through the centuries.
Yes.
And how he's just like, gosh, that old man's doing stuff again. And then he's immediately like, but you know what? I understand why he did that. It makes sense.
It's a much more like temperate Lion.
Yeah.
While still doling out the punishment and the pain. I mean, obviously we know his very next step is to go banish Angron from this mortal plane again to save Dante. We know that that's his next step. But then after that, do you think he goes and finds Bob first, or do you think he goes to his chapter first?
I have no idea.
I don't either. I could see either one. Like, does he get a note out across the rift? Like, hey, guess what? We're back. I'm back. Come see me or come talk to me. Send me a message.
Well, I mean, there is that kind of bridge, that
right,
that Dante and Reboot have both taken to get between Ball, I guess, and Imperium Sanctum. Yes.
So I nearly send my tablet off my desk there. There is a pathway. It's going to be interesting. What is more important, like an order of operations? Is it more important for him to go see his brother? Or is it more important for him to get his sons in line? Or is he going to make a classic Lion mistake and be like, they'll get the message that I'm back and they'll just know what to do? They'll also have done the math.
I don't know.
Do the Risen have to paint their armor green?
Yes.
I think they do. It's going to be interesting when they show up in their green armor and they'll just be like, yeah, I'm Zabriel. Like, we don't have any record of a Zabriel. Clerical error.
Clerical error. I mean.
Like, are you sure you're not fallen? Yeah. It's going to be, I'm here for this. I'm here for the next book with the Lion where, let me ask you this though. We have the next Dawn of Fire book coming out.
Which is not going to have the Lion because this is like pre all this. So,
Does the
Yeah.
Lion ever enter into the Dawn of Fire series? And do you give less of a crap about Dawn of Fire now that the Lion's back?
Like, I kind of stopped giving a crap about Dawn of Fire about 2 or 3 books ago.
Fair.
The last one just kind of sealed it for me. Again, I understand why part of me understands why they decided to do this. But then you needed to get them out much faster than you have, because now everything has moved on, because this all takes place before the fight with Mortarion, right? So now if this is all after that fight, well, then none of this stuff matters.
I had to go back and look. The first Dawn of Fire book that we read was in August of 2020.
Yeah, they're taking too long for this.
And I get it. You don't want to like just bam, 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 bam. Like you don't want to just crank them out. I get it. But now that the Lion's back, my first thought when I got to the end of this book was A, I want more Lion, but B, God, this makes that series even more moot.
Yeah.
Like I don't care about any of this. Like when I think about the next book, I'm even like more about it, because this magical MacGuffin plot going on over here, like, great. We have another Primarch. Like, you need to tell us more Primarch stuff with the Lion, because when Bob came out, to be fair, when Bob came out, there were like 5 books about him.
Yeah.
Or in which he was in, right? Because like you had Dark Imperium, you had him showing up with Devastation of Baal, you had him in Watchers of the Throne. He was mentioned in the oh my god, the Vaults of Terra series. Like he was, his presence was being known. I'm gonna get the weather with the Lion.
Well, and I think I told you that, when I finished, there was an afterword in the limited edition. I don't know if it's in the hardback or not, but Mike Brooks wrote the afterword at the very least. He wrote that in June 2022. So they've had this book for nearly a year. This is another problem. And I understand that why they might have wanted to sit on it because of the whole Dawn of Fire thing. But Dawn of Fire, you guys have got to be... I think that's why we're getting another one so fast, is because they're realizing, crap. Like... I mean, people are losing interest in this because they want to know what's going on new in the Imperium, not what happened in the very beginning.
Right. They want to see what's going on now. And I think... I know we've talked about this, and I don't want to derail this conversation too much, but it was, I mentioned it only because it was my first thought, is that, like, you never should have done this Dawn of Fire series. You should have just kept going on with the Dark Imperium, or figured out something else. The fact that we're going back to go through the Indomitus Crusade. Well, now that the Lion's awake, I don't care unless he is an integral part of it. Are you going to have to go and reboot Dawn of Fire now to deal with the fact that midway through the Lion wakes up? I don't know. Maybe.
What is this? Comic books?
At this point, yes, it's starting to feel that way, which I don't want it to feel this way. Too much comic trauma. I will say that having read this, I'm very excited for our next book. But having read this, I'm like, oh man, now we gotta go back in time.
Yeah, we gotta go back in time.
But I do get to carry a nice limited edition in my hands again, since I missed both the hardback and the limited edition, if I didn't mention that already, about the Lion. I'm very bitter, especially given how much I loved this book.
She's not bitter. Not at all.
I am not even denying it. There is no denial here. I'm owning it. This is like, I just love this book so much. But so we are reading Armageddon by ADB next, which will be, it's going to be fun. It's going to be good. I'm excited to read it. But I'm like, again, and now I'm impatient. Like, well, I want to see what happens next with the Lion.
Well,
I need him to go do stuff and things.
Who knows what book we're going to get next?
The sisters book, like when you look at so let's hold with us for 1 second here as I go and look at the Black Library coming soon page. The books that are coming soon are the Pilgrims of Fire book, which that hardback sold out in like 2 seconds. the Leviathan omnibus, which I'm pretty sure is a
It's a
reprint
reprint.
of that. Yeah, because I have that one. The Martyr's Tomb, which is the next Dawn of Fire book. Get hype. Lords of Blood or Blood Angels omnibus. Void King in paperback. Like, Cypher's coming out in hardback, and then you have a new Warhammer crime book, which the crime series I think has basically been dead. I like to imagine that somebody was like, what happened to that? Do we still publish those? Like, not very inspiring. And I know that the summer always is kind of like they kind of treat the summer like I went back and looked through some of the books that we've read over the summer, and I can remember conversations where we were like, man, nothing's releasing this summer.
Except for 2 summers ago, we did read Godblight.
That's true. How was that already 2 summers ago? Oh my god.
Yeah. 3 summers ago was the last of Fabulous Bill book.
And then so that would mean that what 4 summers ago was Apocalypse?
Could be.
Because I read that one in Costa Rica.
Ah, yes, then yes.
Yeah, that I'm so sorry. That was like the most casually bougie thing I've said tonight. But I am excited to read Armageddon. I loved this book, though. This is definitely going to be one of my top contenders. There were so many great lines in it. I really enjoyed it. I'm now like scrolling eBay for hardbacks or limited editions of this stupid book. This is where my life has brought me. I want more Lion. I want to see what he's doing, where he's going. This fundamentally changes the world. Don't want to read more Indomitus Crusade, where the world has not been fundamentally changed by the return of the Lion.
Or really by anything. Because nothing in it matters.
But there's a magical MacGuffin plot, Carrie.
It's not going to matter.
And an Inquisitor a rogue trader who was very, featured in that Void King book, and now she's back because you thought to yourself, what happened to her and her before she got killed?
None of it matters.
I can't tell if this is my headache or if I really am just this grumpy about this series. Talk amongst yourselves.
Like the whole Shards of Erebus thing. Wasn't that with Dawn of Fire?
Yes. Okay. The Shards of Erebus and the stupid ring and the machine to run the ring.
None of that's going to matter. None of it matters.
No.
Because this is all after.
But unlike Lewis's speech, it is not brief, but it is pointless. Nice, very nice, bloated, but pointless.
Wow, we could use
I really turned into a hater.
We could use that for a lot of stuff in the Warhammer 40k, though. Bloated, but pointless.
That's fair. That is actually very fair. Looking at you, Siege of Terra. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, before all the grumpiness comes out. Heresy? What, you didn't think that it needed to be like 80 books detailing what every single Primarch ate at Angron's birthday party?
To be fair, it's only 54 books describing what Angron ate at his birthday party.
So far.
So far.
It's exactly like...
There's more short stories that could be written, folks.
Exactly. More short stories, more books, more pictures of spaghetti. Anyways, do you want to take us out, Carrie?
Well, on that note, I'm talking about, what spaghetti the Primarchs ate for dinner. Yeah, I think I will. So you have listened to the Warhammer 40k Book Club episode regarding The Lion, the Son of the Forest by Mike Brooks. Be sure to join us next time for Armageddon by Aaron Dembski-Bowden. We are an unofficial book club and not affiliated with the Black Library or any of its affiliates. You can find both the vidcast and podcast on our website, wh40kbookclub.com. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, give a review, and all those things to the vidcast on YouTube or the podcast on anywhere you get podcasts. Our site also has articles about our adventures in reading other Warhammer 40k books and short stories outside of the book club books. So please stay a while and read from our crag. Yeah, I'm not Alfarius tonight because I'm just...
I am not going to suggest that you're getting... Chartreuse, because apparently I just buy everything digitally now because I can't get the copies online.
Well, you could. people are selling like tons of them on eBay.
Let me tell you, that was not happening. I would pay, like, for a 75 book, $100. Okay, sure, whatever. You got to it first. Congratulations. But $200? Get bent.
Oh, I have.
That's how I'm ending the podcast with my migraine.
Yep.
Get bent, bud.
Yep. I have my own little personal speech about people who do this. But anyway, I'll save it for
They're horrible.
never. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.